Welcome to Shore Perspectives, a community feature of WESR Radio, highlighting the spirit of the shore from those who call it home.
I'm Isaiah Shields. I live in Utah, sort of, at the moment, but my dad was in the Air Force, so I've moved many places over the course of my life.
But for this week, or maybe not even, just this weekend at least, you're going to be a resident of the Eastern Shore.
That's right. You know, the whole walking thing was kind of arbitrary. Mostly I just wanted to see the world and understand it a little bit better. But mostly I think what I wanted to get out of it was an understanding of what was worth doing with my life. I used to tell people when I worked a 9 to 5, I worked in corporate finance before I did this. You know, on Saturdays you have your day off, and so you wake up in the morning and you go, what do I want to do today? And in order to answer that question, you have to go, well, what's worth doing? What do I care about? What are my values? What impact do I want to have? What do I want to be working towards? And I wanted to do that every day of the week instead of just one day a week. And so I call it living intentionally. Quite easy to get caught up in the thick of thin things. If you're too busy, you never spend enough time evaluating, is this the direction I wanted to be headed? Am I becoming the person I want to be? Am I working towards the things that'll be most meaningful at the end of my life? And so I wanted to not get so caught up in stuff that doesn't really matter. And I wanted to do things at the end of my life I was glad I did. And this seemed like one way to sort of slow down, see other people's stories, figure out what mine should be.
So when did you get to the Eastern Shore?
3 days ago or so. Not too long ago. I have some family just across the other side of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. And so they ferried me across because you're not allowed to walk. And then I've been walking just the last 2 or 3 days. So I started in Utah, and then the whole concept of the journey was to walk from the westernmost point of the continental United States to its easternmost point. So I walked from Utah through Idaho and Oregon up into Washington. That's where the westernmost point is. It's called Cape Alava. And from there I just turned around and started pointing to the other one. But I got to about Montana and it started to snow on me and stuff like that, so I walked down to Texas for the sake of staying a little warmer. And then I walked across to Florida, and now I'm on my way up to Maine where that easternmost point is.
How many miles do you walk in a day?
The average is low 20s, 21, 23-ish. My best day was 53 back in South Carolina. And if I get rained out, like yesterday I think I walked 15. Anyway, but 20 miles a day is a good guesstimate. I think the whole Delmarva Peninsula was 170 miles long. So that's, 10, not quite 10 days, 8 days, something like that. You know, I've walked a lot of places, and there's always some times where you just find this special pocket where it's just really interesting. I've walked a lot of forgettable miles, and I don't really remember them, but the Eastern Shores has been quite special. It just feels like a land sort of locked in time. I don't know, if everybody seems like there's a real sense of community here. And the history has just been fascinating. I mean, walking through Eastville just yesterday, seeing those court records, they let you go in there and just handle them for yourself. It's been really cool. And so I know some people will go on long distance treks and it's just about the sense of endurance or something like that. Whereas that was really never the point for me. The whole idea was to saw what I saw along the way. I don't try to point at things, I don't plan ahead what's coming. I like to just stumble upon it. So the Court Green in Eastville, I just saw it on my left-hand side, saw the informational plaques, and started investigating. And it's so much more fun when you just find this thing that you just stumbled upon, rather than sort of setting up expectations to find something and then going and executing on it. And every day could just turn up something new. I remember when I was in Texas, I just walked into a town, had no idea what was there, and I saw one of the gas stations that they used as a model for the movie Cars. So I was I've seen that gas station before. And it was right on Route 66, and it was just cool just to stumble right upon it. And I know I'd seen it before in the movies. I've developed a sense, not intentionally, but because I'm always camped near the roads usually, and I can tell if a car is just continuing by or if it's doing slowing to right where I am. And so if I hear that happen, I can be in the middle of being asleep and my body will just wake up and just be ready to just explain myself. Maybe they're worried about their safety. So you'll be awake at 3 in the morning and the blue lights of a police car will turn on right next to you. And so you just have to wake up and be hello, officer. So you just have to have that skill to go from 0 to, very presentable and polite and make them feel at ease and make them feel comfortable, all in a matter of seconds. And then you have to be, yeah, it's a very sensory overload type lifestyle. You have to be monitoring everything all the time. I've had stuff stolen from me. I've had people almost hit me because they're on their phones. And so you just have to be very aware of what you're doing. But on the flip side of that is you just are always out there. And so a lot of opportunities happen to you. Like right before I crossed into Virginia, people will pull over all the time just to chat. And a guy pulled over, he said his name was Scott. And he had a house right on the river, and if I would like, I could stay there. And he had this dock that went right onto the river, and it was really, really pretty, and he let me stay in his house. And he didn't know me more than 30 seconds before he made the decision that I could sleep at his house. It's remarkable. You know, I don't feel very comfortable like asking for help, just because I don't know why. Maybe it's just how I was raised, a sense of like self-dependency and that kind of stuff. But so almost everything that people assist me with, they've just done of their own volition without me asking. They pulled over, they didn't know who I was. But I think the conclusion I've come to is that we're all much more similar than we are different. And so we like to help each other because we are all, in one sense, one big family, which I know can come off as cliche or corny. But one of my favorite stories from Louisiana, I was in a little town called Slidell. Never been there before, but I had a friend that used to live there, and she connected me with an old neighbor of hers. And so I'm 28. I think she was in her 40s or so. She's a single mom, and she lived by herself, but she was still comfortable having this almost 30-year-old male just live in her house. And the next day, I was just getting ready. She had cooked me like breakfast, and she was kind of quiet. But she asked me, I just have to ask you like a few questions, because this is such an odd concept. I've never heard of anything like this, let alone them living in my house for a day. And she basically just said, like, what happened to you? Like, you were living a relatively normal life from what I understand, because my friend had talked to her. And she said, and then all of a sudden you give up living in a house, you give up having a job and a car and friends and family, and you just live in a tent, you're homeless for a year plus. She goes, what happened? Something had to have triggered it. And we had a conversation about just some of the trials we've had in our life. And it made me realize that this single woman, and I'm with a family and children, and I'm a single guy who's never had any of that. On the surface it seems like we're quite different people. But underneath, the things that really like make us a human, a sense of insecurity, a sense of wanting to belong, a sense of like wanting to feel love, a sense of like fear and embarrassment and pride, all that kind of stuff. We have all that in common. We've all had nights where like we didn't know what we were going to do with our life. We've all had moments where we were devastated. Even me and this person I've never met before in Louisiana. And so I made the post this next day because it was just on my mind. And I showed all these portraits I'd taken of all these people from every state you can imagine, from every walk of life, every type of employment, every background, every story. And all of them had been incredibly kind to me. All of them had a story. And all of them have had those moments where their humanity really was at the core of the center of their mind, just trying to figure out what life meant. And so I said, I remember the last line of the post was, everybody that you see on the street, everybody that I just ran into on the street, this is true for all of them. And I hope that people remember that that's true for not only the people I pass on the streets, but the ones you do as well. We just all have so much more in common than we think we do. Yeah, so unfortunately the human brain is sort of primed to notice differences. That's one of the ways it keeps itself safe. If it sees something out of the ordinary, it wants to investigate to see if it's dangerous. And that sort of has trickled over into how we treat each other. We notice our differences first. But if we could find a way to like break that barrier and just sort of get to know each other a little bit better instead of always being so isolated, and instead of finding ways to increasingly isolate ourselves, we have walls that separate us from our neighbors. And I understand it all, but there's just something that speaks to me and goes, man, I wish we could just understand each other a little bit better. And that's what I try to do with the things I create, the posts, the videos, and show people what it's like. It's a safe world, mostly. My main channels that I post to are YouTube. The channel is called You Do You, like the expression. You do you. And then I'll post on like Facebook quite a bit. It's Isaiah Glenn Shields. And then Instagram is IG Shields 27. One of the other themes that I sort of believe in is that we're all much more capable of doing difficult things than we thought. A lot of times people think of big goals like writing a book or starting a company as something other people do. That, those other people. But just go for it. Even if it doesn't end up like working, you'll have seen stuff that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. You'll have experienced stuff. And you will have changed for the better.
For Shore Perspectives and WESR Radio, I'm Kelley Gaskell.